today we have with us Anni Karttunen, Senior Education Policy Specialist. She was also the head of adult education in the Finnish NA, and today is a entrepreneur, a freelance if we want, supporting organizations in their educational strategies as well and education policy.
So, if we're talking about adult education or adult learning, I would like to always include the learning part here because adults, well, people in general, they learn about 85% of everything they learn during their lifetime in other contexts than in education, be it non-formal or formal. So that's why, especially when we're talking about adult learners, we always need to sort of praise that and you know somehow respect that adults especially have so much other competencies that they've gained during their lifetime, and they can always bring all those experiences to us into the learning spaces, also in the formal education and non-formal education spaces. And if you think about the history of adult education, it actually started out in most countries in a way as a tool for especially workers to gain better life, to gain tools, and to basically, foster participation and democracy. If you think about, for example, England, which was industrialized, really horrible conditions, they started, you know, building up these schools for working people. Same in Eastern Europe, there were these workers' universities, popping up. Finland also has similar roots for about 250 years old for workers, this adult education. So the whole idea and the whole Grundtvigian philosophy behind the adult learning is actually, it's all about democracy and participation. So in a way, I'm feeling that I'm preaching to a choir now. But anyways, it's very important to discuss these things. Adult education, it is a very powerful tool for promoting inclusion and active citizenship and all this that we're talking about here today. And I think in most countries, if we're talking about, for example, the Erasmus Plus programs, and their focus, it's all about inclusion and including people who are not, most well off in their, situations. That it's about unemployed people, it's about disabled people, it's about immigrants, it's about, all these different groups that we try to, get a hold on and bring with us to be active citizens. And really, the adult education, it's about lifelong learning. It's just not for work, it's about other competencies as well. Sometimes I remember I was quite frustrated when I was sitting at the EU Commission in Brussels when they were preaching us about these new policy programs, and they were all about skills, 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 skills. And I said, no, adult education is so much more than just building up skills. It's also about, like empowerment. It's about really these democracy issues and stuff. So this is something that I feel that we always, as adult educators, we always need to fight back in a way, that keep on reminding the policymakers that it's not only about skills, that we are not machines. And basically our skills are also built upon these softer skills or softer issues and participation. And especially nowadays, if we think about, the world is a crazy place. There's so much more antagonism and mistrust and you know the media has gone a little bit crazy. Politicians have gone a bit crazy. There are wars popping up and everything is a little bit weird. So now our role is even, in a more emphasized position to bring people together, despite of cultural differences, despite of linguistic differences, etc. And of course, then there are these big things like digital and green competencies that are really important for our future. So, I mean, we have to look at these things from very diverse perspectives in a way. Okay, and then of course we are in a big sort of breakthrough line at the moment with AI, for example, and what challenges it brings. We've got different kinds of online platforms. So basically information is more and more available to all of us, but then we have to remember that there are dangers in that as well. And especially I think the non-native IT age people are maybe more in danger and more at risk of somehow dropping into these wolf holes, as we say. Obviously, the priority has been in adult education has been to empower low-skilled or low-qualified adults. I want to make this distinction as well because sometimes we're talking about low-skilled people, even though they actually have a lot of skills, but they don't have qualifications. So this is something that I really want to emphasize. And it's about encouraging institutions to develop democratic learning environments. And this is something that I see that there is a bit of a lacking of that we need to really start pursuing these democratic learning environments more sort of mindfully. And then, of course, promoting non-formal education as a space for civic learning and social dialogue. As I said, it's not only about skills, but it's about these core issues. And of course, it's about mobility, cooperation, etc., etc. when we're talking about the Erasmus Plus programs. And then if we go back again, a little bit of a sort of historical look, participation in Europe, it's a right. The Treaty on European Union states that every citizen has the right to participate in the democratic life of the Union. And I find this really, really important. I have just listed here the different types of actions, how participation is enabled. So, yeah. And then if you think about, you can divide participation and democratic participation to different sort of environments. And first of all, of course, as adult educators, I'm going to say a few words about the learning environment. How can we enhance that? We can sort of teach about participatory decision making, and sort of strengthen that in our classrooms as well. For example, that adult learners can take part in decisions about curriculum, the content of what they're being taught, what kind of teaching methods we're using, how do we evaluate, etc., etc. So we can have co-created syllabi, for example. So adult people feel ownership of the classes that they're taking. Then we can talk about deliberative dialogue and discussion. How do we engage group discussions, debates, critical reflections on social, political, and cultural issues? Then, as I said, that adults have a lot of skills and competencies, gained throughout their life in different kinds of contexts. So that's why also peer teaching and these learning circles are especially important to promote, because we all have different experiences and different kinds of skills that we can teach one another. And even in formal context, I used to have my students teach the other students. So that first of all, I realized that I, as a teacher, am always learning new things because I have to jump into new topics. And when I was teaching, I learned myself. So I thought this is a perfect learning method for my students as well. So I gave them assignments that, okay, this is your topic, now you teach the others, and they really learned it much better than just by listening. And then, of course, we've got different kinds of student councils and committees that can sort of promote participation as well in the learning environment. But then there's a whole other arena. There's the civic and community life. And as adult educators, we can promote these ideas as well in our teaching and in the classroom. For example, what does voting mean? What is electoral participation? It's the most direct and common way of democratic participation, but this is not very much taught or discussed in the adult learning sphere, I feel. So we could take up these issues and have like mock elections, for example, like they do with young people. Then, of course, there are community meetings. There are different kinds of forums like town halls and public discussions locally, and you can really have a big impact on these local arenas. Then, of course, volunteering, civic engagement, they're a massive part of adult learning arena. At least I have always said that Finland is the sort of the dream country of volunteers. We've got so many volunteering organizations for everything in this country that sometimes it's even, a little bit confusing, to be honest. But it's really important that people feel engaged through these volunteering organizations. Then, of course, basic advocacy and collective actions. You can join unions, you can participate in different NGOs, etc., movements, campaigns for rights, etc. So this is also something that we should have a little bit more discussion about in the adult learning arena. The digital and lifelong learning spaces that are becoming more and more common. There are different kinds of online petitions and campaigns. So to teach adults how to use different kinds of digital tools to make their voices heard, it's important. E-democracy platforms, for example, learning through media literacy. And this is something that I really emphasize, that this is now today really, really, really important to have people more media literate and critical towards what they read and what they learn online. I just have a few sort of ideas here about framing of democratic participation in adult learning. And let's put it this way, that, for example, I think the key qualities for promoting participation are as communication, critical thinking, digital literacy. Competencies could be democratic knowledge. We have to check ourselves. Do we have enough understanding and information about how democracy works, and what are those key issues in our societies? Cultural sensitivity. Are we culturally sensitive enough? And the empowerment factor, and this has to do with listening as well, a lot. And then what kind of attitudes we carry to the classroom. It's about inclusivity, it's about openness, it's about ethical responsibility. And remember that adult educators really are democracy's facilitators, so we really have to take this seriously. And then what are the effective methods, approaches? Of course, curriculum design and co-design around real-life democratic issues. As I said, not only skills, but about democratic issues as well. And we can blend this into the teaching situation. Then active learning, debates, simulations, inclusive, safe learning environments. This is important, especially nowadays. Civic engagement through partnerships. What kind of partnerships you as a teacher can form, for example, to local NGOs, and how can you sort of, foster these partnerships with your education? Professional development of educators is really important. That's why we thank you that you're here now. And then, of course, we've got the participatory spaces. If we're thinking about physical, for example, is it accessible? Are they safe? How interactive they are? online about the usability of the tools, transparency, moderation, how they're moderated. And then they should be tailored to according to age and context, because we have such an array of different kinds of clients of different ages and different backgrounds and different cultures, etc., etc. So we have so many things to consider. So, yep. And then, of course, about the media literacy and literacies, different kinds of literacies, really. There's digital literacy, information, media, visual, cultural, critical literacy. These all are combined in this nice picture that I found online. So our job is really to empower learners how to detect misinformation and how to participate responsibly online, how to engage across cultures. Then, of course, there are several sort of policies and frameworks directed directly at democratic participation in the EU. But I would say that the key frameworks for adult learning are the European Agenda for Adult Learning and the New European Skills Agenda. And these, basically, if you read these and if you think about what they both promote participation, because they both promote, for example, basic skills. Without basic skills, it's really hard to be an active citizen. So these are sort of intertwined, even though these policies or frameworks do not so directly speak about democratic participation, but it's in the background of the whole idea of these frameworks. And then I have just listed some key resources if you are not familiar with this. For example, if you've got new colleagues that are not so familiar with these issues, so you can share these with them. For example, the European Association for the Education of Adults. It's basically our main voice towards the Commission in adult education issues. They've got lots of different kinds of tools, etc., that are worth taking a look at. Another one is similar organization is called Lifelong Learning Platform. And I've been working with both these organizations over my years. So I guarantee these are legit and really smart people working there and producing really good information. And then I've got these links for tools, like really practical examples on what you can actually use probably in the classroom as well. For example, the Cards of Democracy for All, really excellent tool, and it's all free to use. So you can take a look at these after this session.